Dr. Jaiwan Park rubbed her tired eyes as she stared at the monitors in the quiet control room of Seoul's Quantum Communications Center. The clock on the wall showed 3:27 a.m., and most of her colleagues had gone home hours ago. Only the soft hum of computers and the occasional beep from the sensors kept her company. She reached for her third cup of coffee when something unusual caught her eye. At first, it looked like a normal spike in the background radiation readings, the kind of cosmic noise they picked up every day. But there was something different about this one. "That's odd," she whispered to herself, leaning closer to the screen. The pattern repeated itself every 12 seconds, exactly the same way each time. Natural phenomena never showed such precise timing. Jaiwan pulled up the data from other monitoring stations around the world. The same pattern appeared in all of them, like a heartbeat echoing across the stars. Her hands shook slightly as she picked up her phone to call Dr. Han Ta-sung, her department head. "Dr. Han, I'm sorry to wake you, but you need to see this." "Ji-won." "It's the middle of the night," he answered, his voice heavy with sleep. "I know, but this is important. The background radiation, it's showing a pattern. A real pattern, not just random noise." 20 minutes later, Dr. Han walked into the control room, his coat thrown hastily over his pajamas. His usual neat appearance was replaced by messy hair and wrinkled clothes, but his eyes were sharp as he looked at the data. "Could be equipment malfunction," he said, but Jae-won was already shaking her head. "I checked. It's showing up everywhere. New York, London, Cape Town, Sydney. All the stations are picking up the same signal." Dr. Han fell silent as he watched the pattern repeat again. And again. And again. Each cycle was perfect, identical to the last. "Get me the historical data," he said finally. "When did this start?" Jaiwan pulled up the archives, scrolling through days of readings. "That's another strange thing. It's been there for months, maybe years. We just never noticed because we weren't looking for it. It's like..." She paused, searching for the right words. "It's like someone's been knocking on our door, waiting for us to hear them." Over the next few hours, more scientists arrived at the center. The quiet night turned into a buzz of activity as they ran tests and checked equipment. Phones rang constantly as research centers worldwide confirmed they were seeing the same thing. By sunrise, the news had spread beyond the scientific community. Reporters gathered outside the building, and Jae-won's phone was flooded with messages from colleagues and journalists. But she barely noticed any of it. Her attention was fixed on the pattern that kept repeating, steady and unchanging, like a lighthouse beam cutting through the darkness of space. "What do you think it is?" a young technician asked her as they watched the signal together. Jae-won thought carefully before answering. I think someone out there is trying to tell us something. And they've been very patient, waiting for us to notice." Dr. Han joined them, holding fresh printouts of the signal analysis. "Whatever it is, it's artificial. The pattern is too perfect to be natural. The question is, who made it? And why?" Jae-won looked at the endless stream of data flowing across her screen. In all her years of studying space communications, she had never seen anything like this. The signal wasn't just a pattern, it was a message. She could feel it in her bones. "I don't know who sent it," she said quietly, "but I think they need our help. Why else would they try so hard to get our attention?" As the morning sun rose over Seoul, casting long shadows through the control room windows, Jae-won and her team settled in for what would become one of the most important scientific investigations in human history. The universe had been calling, and humanity had finally picked up the phone. None of them knew it yet, but this was just the beginning. The signal would lead humanity down a path that would change not just Earth, but the entire universe. And it all started because one scientist stayed late at work, paid attention to something unusual, and decided to listen. Song Ha-rim stared at her computer screen until her eyes burned. For 3 months, she and her team at the International Space Agency's Korean branch had worked non-stop to decode the signal. Coffee cups and empty lunchboxes littered her desk, testament to the long hours she spent in her office. "There has to be a pattern," she muttered, rubbing her temples. The walls of her office were covered with printouts showing different ways to analyze the signal. Some looked like sound waves, others like light patterns, and many were just strings of numbers that seemed to mean nothing at all. A knock on her door broke her concentration. "Come in," she called out. Dr. Jae-won Park walked in, carrying 2 fresh cups of coffee. Since discovering the signal, she had been working closely with the translation team. "Any progress?" she asked, handing Ha-Rim one of the cups. "Maybe." Ha-Rim pointed to her screen. "Look at this. When we break down the signal into groups of 7 pulses, something interesting happens. It's like reading music notes, but with math." Jae-won leaned closer. On the screen, the mysterious signal had been arranged into neat rows. When viewed this way, clear patterns emerge, like a sheet of alien music. The signal repeats every 7 pulses. Ha-Rim explained, her voice getting excited. "But it's not just repeating. It's building on itself, like someone teaching a child to speak. First simple patterns, then more complex ones." Just then, Ha-Rim's computer made a strange sound. Numbers began flowing across the screen faster than they could read them. The translation program she had written was finding matches. Lots of them. "Look," she gasped. "The first pattern. It's counting. 1, 2, 3. They're teaching us their numbers first, just like we teach children." Over the next few hours, more people gathered in Ha-Rim's office. The excitement grew as they began to understand more pieces of the message. The beings who sent it, they called themselves the Guardians, had created a kind of universal language based on mathematics and physics. "It's brilliant," Ha-Rim explained to the group. They knew that any advanced civilization would understand math and the basic laws of physics, so they used that as a starting point to teach us their language. As days passed, more of the message became clear. The Guardians revealed that they were an ancient race, perhaps the first intelligent beings in the universe. They had spent millions of years watching life develop across the cosmos. "This part is interesting," Ha-Rim said one morning, pointing to a new section they had decoded. "They say they seeded consciousness throughout the universe, like gardeners planting flowers." "But why send the message now?" Jae-won asked, looking over her shoulder. The answer came a few days later, and it made everyone in the room fall silent. The Guardians were dying. Not just a few of them. Their entire civilization was facing extinction. "They've watched us," Ha-Rim read from the translated message. "For thousands of years, they've been studying Earth. They saw how humans, despite all our problems, keep trying to help each other. How we send aid to other countries after disasters. How we try to save endangered animals. How we care about things beyond ourselves." The final part of the message was both an invitation and a plea. The Guardians had built something, a gateway of some kind, and they were inviting humanity to find it. "They're not just asking for help," Ha-Rim said quietly. "They're offering us a choice, a chance to become something more than we are." The room fell silent as the weight of this discovery sank in. Somewhere out there, the oldest civilization in the universe was reaching out to humanity. Not because we were the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced. They chose us because, in all their watching, they saw something in humans that they didn't see anywhere else, a willingness to help others, even at a cost to ourselves. As Ha-Rim looked around at her tired but excited colleagues, she felt a strange mix of pride and fear. The universe had called out for help, and of all the civilizations that might have answered, humanity was the one that heard and understood. Now they just had to decide what to do about it. Lee Jun-ho stood at the window of the Space Center, watching workers prepare the massive rocket that would carry them to Jupiter. After 20 years as an astronaut, he thought he had seen everything. But this mission was different. This time, they weren't just exploring. They were answering a call. Nervous? asked Kang Mai-Ray, walking up beside him. The quantum physicist had spent the last month teaching him about the strange science they might encounter. Not nervous, Jun-Ho replied, just ready to go. He turned to look at the complex equations Mai-Ray had drawn on the nearby whiteboard. You're sure about these coordinates? Mai-Ray nodded. The message wasn't just asking for help. It was giving us directions. The numbers point to a spot near Jupiter's orbit. Whatever the Guardians built, it's waiting for us there. Their conversation was interrupted by Captain Yoon Sung-min, the mission commander. He was carrying a stack of papers and looking worried. Bad news, he said. The United Nations is still arguing about the mission. Some countries think it's too dangerous. They want us to wait. Jun-Ho frowned. Wait for what? The signal's been getting weaker every day. The Guardians might not have much time left. That's why we're not waiting, a new voice said. They turned to see the Korean Space Agency director walking in. The president has given us permission to launch. If other countries want to argue, they can do it while we're on our way to Jupiter. The next few days passed in a blur of final preparations. The crew of 5 boarded the ship they had named Serenity. Besides Jun-Ho, Mai-Ray, and Captain Yoon, there were 2 others, Kim Do-yeon, their engineer, and Dr. Choi Eun-ji, who would study whatever they found. Launch day arrived cold and clear. As the countdown reached 0, Jun-Ho felt the familiar push of the rockets. But this time, something was different. This wasn't just another mission. They were humanity's first response to a universe that had asked for help. The first weeks in space were busy with normal spacecraft operations. They checked equipment, ran tests, and prepared for what they might find. Mai-Ray spent hours studying the signal, which was getting stronger as they got closer to Jupiter. Look at this, she said one day, calling the crew to the main computer. The signal's changed. It's like it knows we're coming. Captain Yoon leaned in to look at the screen. Is it dangerous? I don't think so, Mai-Ray replied. It feels more like it's getting excited. Like a dog wagging its tail when its owner comes home. Do-yeon, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. But what if we get there and it's a trap? What if something bad is waiting for us? Eun-ji shook her head. Why go to all this trouble? They could have attacked Earth any time if they wanted to. No, they chose us for a reason. They trust us. As they got closer to the coordinates, everyone grew more tense. They were now farther from Earth than any human had ever gone. The giant form of Jupiter filled their view screens, its great red spot staring at them like an eye. There, Jun-Ho shouted one morning. Look! They all crowded around the window. At first, they saw nothing but stars. Then something moved. Or maybe the stars moved around something. It was hard to tell. Whatever it wasn't natural. It's huge, Mai-Ray whispered. Her instruments were going crazy, showing readings that should have been impossible. Captain Yoon took a deep breath. Send the message, he ordered. Mai-Ray pressed a button, sending out the response they had prepared. It was simple. We heard you. We're here to help. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the space in front of them seemed to twist. Stars bent in ways they shouldn't. A soft blue light began to glow. The thing they had seen was revealing itself. It was a structure bigger than anything humans had ever built, covered in patterns that matched the signal they had been studying. It's beautiful, Eun-ji said softly. Jun-Ho looked at his crew members' faces, lit by the blue glow of the ancient structure. They were the first humans to see this, the first to answer the universe's call for help. Whatever happened next would change everything. The structure was waking up, and humanity was there to meet it. Kim Do-yeon pressed her face against the viewport of the Serenity, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. The structure floating before them was impossible. As the ship's engineer, she knew what buildings in space should look like. This wasn't anything like that. It's changing again, she called out to the others. The massive structure had been slowly unfolding for the past hour, like a flower opening to the sun. Its surface rippled with blue light that seemed to flow like water. Captain Yoon floated up beside her. "Can you tell what it's made of?" "No," Du Yan shook her head. "Our scanners can't even tell if it's solid or not. But look at these patterns." She pointed to lines that curved across the structure's surface. They matched the signal exactly. It's like the whole thing is one big message. The crew gathered in the control room as they moved closer. Dr. Choi Yun-ji was recording everything with 3 different cameras. Lee Jun-ho carefully piloted the ship while Kang Mi-rae watched her instruments. "Something's happening," Mi-rae suddenly shouted. "The energy readings are going crazy." The structure had stopped moving. A large opening had appeared in its center, glowing with soft blue light. It looked like a doorway to somewhere else. "Look at this," Du Yin said, pointing to her screen. "These patterns, they're not just decoration. They're instructions." She had been studying alien technology all her life, preparing for a moment she never thought would come. Now it was here, and she could hardly believe what she was seeing. Instructions for what? Captain Yoon asked. "For how to use it. The Guardians built this millions of years ago, but they made it so anyone could understand it. See these symbols? They're like a universal user manual." The crew watched as Du Yun explained what she was seeing. The structure wasn't just a building, it was a machine. A very old, very powerful machine that had been waiting a very long time for someone to find it. "They built it to last," she said, her voice full of wonder. "Everything has backups. Every system can repair itself. It's been out here all this time, just waiting, keeping itself ready." Suddenly, a new light appeared. A beam shot out from the structure, scanning their ship from front to back. Everyone held their breath. Then a voice filled the ship, not through their radio, but somehow directly in the air around them. It spoke in a language none of them had ever heard, but somehow they could understand it. "Welcome, children of Earth," the voice said. "You have answered our call." Mi-rae's hands flew over her instruments. "It's learning our language from our computers. It's learning everything about us." The voice spoke again, clearer this time. "Your ship has been recognized as worthy. You may approach." Captain Yoon looked at each crew member in turn. They all nodded. They had come too far to turn back now. Slowly, carefully, Jun-ho piloted the Serenity toward the glowing doorway. Du Yun kept watching her readings of the structure, amazed by what she was seeing. "The technology," she whispered. "It's like nothing we've ever imagined. They weren't just ahead of us. They were thinking about things we don't even have words for yet." As they got closer, they could see through the doorway. Beyond it was something else. Not normal space, not anything they could understand. "Energy readings are stable," Mi-rae reported. "Whatever it is, it's safe for our ship. This is what they built it for," Yun-ji said quietly. "This gateway. This is how they traveled between the stars." Captain Yoon took a deep breath. "All right, crew. Final check. Are we ready?" One by one, they confirmed they were ready. Du Yun looked once more at the beautiful patterns covering the structure. The Guardians had built this gateway millions of years ago, hoping someone would find it, hoping someone would care enough to answer their call. "We're ready," she said firmly. The Serenity moved forward into the glowing blue light. The gateway had accepted them. Whatever lay beyond it, they would face it together. Humanity had not just heard the universe's call, they had reached out and touched it. And now they were about to step through a door that would change everything forever. Dr. Choi Yun-ji felt like she was dreaming. The space beyond the gateway was filled with soft golden light. The Serenity floated in what looked like the inside of a vast library, but unlike any library on Earth. Columns of light stretched up and down forever, each one containing what seemed like endless information. It's all their knowledge," she whispered, her hands shaking as she checked her instruments. "Everything the Guardians ever learned. They left it all here for us." Captain Yoon's voice came over the ship's comm. Any signs of danger? No, Kang Mai answered from her station. The air is breathable. Temperature is normal. It's like they made this place just for us. After careful safety checks, the crew prepared to leave their ship. Yunji's heart was beating fast as she put on her light spacesuit, just in case. As the youngest scientist on the mission, she had been chosen for her ability to understand new cultures. But nothing in her training had prepared her for this. The moment her feet touched the floor of the structure, she knew something was different. The surface seemed to glow slightly where she stepped, like it was responding to her presence. "Look at this," Du Yan called out. The engineer was standing near one of the light columns. As she reached out toward it, images appeared in the air around her. They showed scenes from Earth's history, but not the big events. Instead, they showed small moments. People helping strangers, sharing food during hard times, saving animals from danger. They were watching us, Yunji realized. All this time, they were watching us grow. Not to judge us or fear us, but to understand us. More images appeared as the crew moved through the space. They showed other worlds, other species that the Guardians had watched. Some were more advanced than humans, with technology that seemed like magic. Others were just beginning to learn about fire and tools. But they chose us, Mary said, studying the displays. Out of all these civilizations, they chose to contact Earth. Why? Yunji walked deeper into the structure, drawn to a particular column of light. As she approached, it changed color, becoming a warm purple. Images began to flow around her, and somehow she could understand what they meant. "It's because of our mistakes," she said slowly, reading the story the Guardians had left. All these other civilizations, they grew up perfectly. They never had wars, never hurt their planets, never made big mistakes. She turned to face her crewmates. But that's not what the universe needs right now. The others gathered around her as more of the story became clear. The Guardians had seeded life throughout the universe, hoping to create children who would one day take their place as caretakers of all living things. But something had gone wrong. "The universe is dying faster than it should," Yunji explained, reading the ancient messages. The Guardians tried to fix it, but they couldn't. They needed something they didn't have, something that only comes from facing hard times and learning to overcome them. "What's that?" Junho asked. "Hope," Yunji answered simply. "The ability to keep trying even when things seem impossible. The strength to face problems that seem too big to solve." She gestured at the images of Earth. "They chose us because we've made mistakes, but we keep trying to fix them. We've hurt each other, but we keep trying to heal. We've damaged our planet, but we're trying to save it." The room filled with more images. Humans planting trees in deserts, cleaning plastic from oceans, helping endangered species recover, rebuilding cities after disasters. "We're not perfect," Yunji said, touching one of the glowing columns. "We're not the most advanced or the wisest, but we don't give up. That's what the universe needs right now, not a perfect caretaker, but one that understands how hard it is to fix mistakes and is willing to try anyway." Captain Yoon looked around at the vast library of knowledge. "So what happens now?" As if in answer, a new image appeared in the center of the room. It showed the entire universe, but not as they had ever seen it before. They could see the damage that needed healing, the problems that needed solving, and they could see how to fix it if they were willing to try. The Guardians had left them everything they knew. Now humanity had to decide what to do with this inheritance. Captain Yoon Sungmin sat alone in the Serenity's observation room, staring at the glowing library that surrounded their ship. They had been here for 3 days now, learning more about what the Guardians wanted from humanity. The weight of the decision they faced felt heavier than all of space. Someone knocked on the door. "Come in," he called. The whole crew filed in. Du Yun, Yunji, Mirai, and Junho. They all looked tired but determined. "We need to talk about what we found," Mary said quietly. She held up a small device they had discovered in the library. When she turned it on, It showed a detailed image of the universe, but not as they had known it before. "Show him," she said to Du Yun. The engineer pressed a button, and the image changed. Now they could see what was wrong. Like a plant without water, the universe was slowly dying. Stars were fading too fast. Galaxies were growing dark before their time. The Guardians found a way to fix it, Du Yun explained. They created technology that could heal the damage, but using it comes with a price. Captain Yun looked at each of their faces. What kind of price? Yunji stepped forward. To save the universe, whoever uses this technology has to give up their own progress. We couldn't keep developing our own technology. We would have to focus all our energy on being caretakers instead. You mean we'd have to stop exploring space? Stop making new discoveries? Junho asked. Not exactly, Mayray said. We could still learn and grow, but much slower. Most of our resources would go to helping other species, healing damaged parts of space, and keeping the universe alive. Captain Yum stood up and walked to the window. The golden light of the library seemed dimmer now, as if it too was waiting for their decision. How long do we have to decide? He asked. Not long, Du Yun replied. The damage is spreading faster than the Guardians predicted. If someone doesn't start using their technology soon, parts of the universe will begin to die permanently. But why us? Captain Yum turned back to his crew. There are other civilizations out there. Some are more advanced than we are. Because we're the only ones who answered, Yunji said simply. The Guardians sent their message everywhere, but humans were the only ones who heard it and chose to help. The room fell quiet. They all understood what this meant. Humanity could say no. They could go back to Earth, keep developing their own technology, keep reaching for the stars. But if they did, they would be letting the universe slowly die. There's something else, Mayray added. The Guardians left us a message about why they chose us. She pressed another button on the device. An image appeared showing scenes from Earth's history. But these weren't the usual big moments. Instead, they showed small acts of kindness. A child sharing lunch with a hungry friend, a stranger helping someone who had fallen, people working together to save animals from a flood. They saw something in us that they didn't see anywhere else, Mayray explained. Other species might be smarter or more advanced, but humans have this special ability. We help others even when it costs us something. We try to fix things even when they seem hopeless. Captain Yoon looked at his crew. What do you all think? One by one, they shared their thoughts. They talked about what Earth would lose and what the universe would gain. They talked about the responsibility of having this choice. They talked about what it meant to be the species that heard a cry for help and chose to answer. Finally, Captain Yoon turned back to the window. Beyond the library, he could see the stars, countless worlds full of life, all depending on their decision. We should send a message to Earth, he said at last. They need to know what we found and what choice we face. He looked at his crew. But I think I already know what humanity will choose. How can you be sure? Junho asked. Because we're here, Captain Yoon said simply. Because when we heard a call for help from the stars, we didn't ignore it. We came. That's who we are. That's why the Guardians chose us. The crew nodded. They knew he was right. Now they just had to help the rest of humanity understand the amazing and difficult task that lay ahead of them. Dr. Jaewon Park stood at the front of the United Nations Assembly Hall, her heart beating fast. 3 months had passed since the Serenity's crew returned from Jupiter with their incredible news. Now, after endless meetings and discussions, it was time for humanity to give their answer. She looked out at the faces of leaders from every country on Earth. They had all seen the evidence. They had all watched the recordings the crew brought back. They had all studied the Guardians' technology and understood what accepting this responsibility would mean. The vote is complete, the UN Secretary-General announced. His voice was steady, but Jaewon could see his hands shaking slightly as he opened the envelope. The room fell silent. In homes and public spaces around the world, billions of people watched their screens, waiting to hear what humanity had decided. By a vote of 193 to 0, the Secretary General read, "The nations of Earth have chosen to accept the Guardian's request. We will become the caretakers of the universe." Jai-1 felt tears in her eyes as cheers filled the room. She thought back to that quiet night in her lab when she first noticed the signal. How small and alone Earth had seemed then. Now everything had changed. The first changes began almost immediately. Using the Guardian's technology, humans could now see the universe as it really was, a vast web of life that needed their help. Teams of scientists and engineers worked day and night to understand the tools they had been given. At the new Global Space Center in Seoul, Jai-1 worked with Song Ha-rim and others to coordinate humanity's first healing projects. The Serenity's crew helped train other teams, teaching them what they had learned in the Guardian's library. "Look at this," Ha-rim said one morning, showing Jai-1 a screen. It displayed a dying star system that humans had helped stabilize. The planets there were already showing signs of new life. "It's working," Jai-1 whispered. "We're really doing it." Not everything was easy. Some people were upset about giving up rapid technological progress. But as humans began their work as universal caretakers, something unexpected happened. The more they helped other worlds, the more they learned about themselves. 1 year after the vote, Captain Yoon stood with his crew at the launch of humanity's first care fleet. 10 ships, each built with Guardian technology, prepared to leave Earth and begin their mission of healing damaged parts of space. "Remember," he told the new crews, "we weren't chosen because we're perfect. We were chosen because we understand what it means to face big problems and keep trying anyway." As the years passed, humanity grew into their new role. They learned to use the Guardian's technology, not for power or control, but for healing and protection. They watched over developing civilizations, helping when needed but never interfering too much. They became the Guardians they were meant to be. Dr. Choi Eun-ji, now leading the Universal Cultural Center, often told students about the message they had found in the Guardian's library. The universe doesn't need perfect beings to watch over it. It needs beings who understand struggle, who know what it means to fall and get back up, who choose to help others even when it's hard. 5 years after that first signal, Jai-1 stood in her old lab at the Quantum Communication Center. The machines that once searched for signs of alien life now monitored the health of countless star systems. On her desk sat a small piece of Guardian technology, glowing softly. She picked it up and activated it, watching as it showed the universe as it now was, still vast and mysterious, but no longer dying. In fact, in many places, it was growing stronger. New stars were being born. New planets were developing life. And everywhere, humans were helping, healing, protecting. "We heard you," she whispered to the memory of the Guardians. "We came when you called, and we promised to take care of everything you loved." Outside her window, the sun was setting over Seoul. As darkness fell, the stars began to appear, not just distant lights now, but places humans knew and cared for. They were no longer alone in the universe. They were its caretakers, its protectors, its guardians. The universe had begged for help, and humanity had not just listened. They had answered with all their heart, proving that sometimes the most important quality is not power or intelligence, but simply the willingness to help when someone asks. And that was why the Guardians had chosen them. That was why they would succeed. Because in the end, the greatest power in the universe wasn't technology or knowledge. It was the simple choice to care.